It started with something simple, so simple, it almost sounds like a joke. A man was standing in his own driveway, looking at his phone, just updating his Wi-Fi password. Nothing loud, nothing strange. He wasn't yelling. He wasn't pacing. Just standing still, typing on his screen like anyone else might do in the middle of the day. But then, across the street, someone was watching him. She didn't know what he was doing, but she didn't like how it looked. To her, it seemed off, suspicious, and instead of asking questions, she picked up her phone and called 911. Within minutes, police lights flashed down the quiet street. Sirens, uniforms, questions, all because of a Wi-Fi password. But what started as a misunderstanding quickly turned into something no one was ready for. Because when the officers took a closer look at what was really going on at what the man had found, while changing his settings, they uncovered something that had nothing to do with him and everything to do with someone else in the neighborhood. This isn't just a story about technology. It's about judgment, hidden truths, and the damage that can happen when we look at someone and assume the worst. Darius Coleman wasn't the kind of guy who made waves. He worked from home, kept his lawn trimmed, and mostly stayed out of everyone's way. If you saw him around the neighborhood, he'd probably just nod and keep walking. Not rude, just private. He didn't go to block parties, didn't stop to chat about the weather, and definitely didn't care for gossip. That's just how he was. And honestly, nobody ever really had a problem with him. He liked it that way. On that day, though, everything changed because Darius did something completely normal. He noticed his Wi-Fi had been acting up, so he went outside to get a stronger signal while fixing it. That's it. No drama, no noise, just a man outside his house, typing on his phone. But for someone watching from across the street, that was enough to start something big. From her window, his quiet moment didn't look normal. It looked suspicious. And that one tiny moment, the way he stood, how fast his fingers moved, the fact that he never really talked to anyone was all it took to set off a chain of events no one saw coming. Darius had been working all morning, head down, trying to finish a few projects from home. Around midday, he took a break and decided to check his internet speed. Lately, it had been acting weird, videos taking forever to load, calls freezing up, music skipping for no reason. At first, he just thought the service was bad, but something didn't feel right. So he opened his router settings to take a closer look. That's when he saw it, a device connected to his network that he didn't recognize. The name wasn't just a random code, it was labeled Crestwood_IO1. That made him pause. Darius lived alone. He didn't share his Wi-Fi with anyone, didn't have a bunch of extra devices connected, and definitely didn't name anything Crestwood_IO1. Whoever was using his internet wasn't supposed to be. Feeling annoyed and honestly a little creeped out, he decided to kick everything off the network and reset the password for a better signal. He stepped outside to finish the setup. Standing near the edge of his driveway, phone in hand, he started typing in the new settings. It was a quick fix. But while he was out there, minding his own business, someone else was watching, and they didn't see a man fixing his Wi-Fi. They saw a threat. From her kitchen window, Melanie Foster watched Darius standing in his driveway, tapping on his phone. She didn't know what he was doing, but it didn't sit right with her. He looked focused. Still, to her, it just seemed off. Melanie had never really liked Darius, though she couldn't say exactly why. Maybe it was because he kept to himself. Maybe it was because he didn't try to be part of the neighborhood. He never came to cookouts, never waved when she passed by. He just didn't act like everyone else, and that had always bothered her, more than she liked to admit. So as she stared at him, her mind filled in the blanks. What if he was doing something illegal? What if he was trying to mess with someone's internet, or worse, trying to hack something? It didn't make sense. But in that moment, she convinced herself it didn't have to. Her gut told her something was wrong, and that was enough. She picked up her phone, dialed 911, and told the dispatcher her neighbor was outside acting strange with his phone. She didn't have any proof. She couldn't say what he was actually doing, but still she was sure of it. Something wasn't right. Darius had just finished resetting his Wi-Fi password when he heard the sound of sirens in the distance. At first, he didn't think much of it. Sirens came and went all the time. But then he noticed the police car slowing down, then stopping right in front of his house. Two officers stepped out. One was tall and serious looking. The other was shorter, but had a quiet, sharp energy about her. Darius didn't move. He stayed exactly where he was, phone in hand, confused but calm. The taller officer spoke first. "We got a call about suspicious activity," he said. Darius blinked. "I'm standing in my driveway, changing my Wi-Fi password," he said, his voice steady but clearly surprised. It sounded ridiculous just saying it out loud. The officers looked at each other, not sure what to make of it. Then, from the porch across the street, Melanie's voice broke in. "He's lying," she shouted. She walked out of her house, arms crossed, eyes locked on Darius. "He's always outside messing with his phone, watching people, acting strange." Darius looked at her, stunned. "I was on my router settings," he said flatly. "Someone I don't know was using my Wi-Fi." But Melanie wasn't listening. She had already decided he was guilty. And now, what started as a routine tech issue was turning into something much bigger and much more unfair. One of the officers, Navarro, turned back to Darius and asked if they could take a quick look at his router settings just to clear things up. Darius didn't love the idea. He knew he didn't owe anyone an explanation for using his own Wi-Fi. But with the way things were going, he also knew refusing might only make things worse. So he nodded, unlocked his phone, and handed it over. "Here," he said. "It's all there." Navarro leaned in and started scrolling through the list of connected devices, and that's when his face changed. There it was again, Crestwood_IO1 still connected, still active. The name stood out because it didn't match anything else. Officer Carter, the quiet one, looked over his shoulder and frowned. "So someone's been on your network without permission?" she asked. Darius nodded. "And it's been going nonstop. Whoever it is, they weren't just stealing internet." He tapped into the router's activity log and showed them the traffic history. The amount of data moving through that unknown device didn't look normal. Something else was going on, something bigger. Navarro straightened up a bit. The tone shifted. This wasn't about a neighbor misunderstanding anymore. This was starting to look like someone had been watching, maybe even spying, and they needed to find out who. Darius clicked deeper into the settings, pulling up the router logs and camera data. His face went still. "It's not just internet," he said quietly. "Someone's been accessing my home security cameras." The room went quiet. Officer Carter leaned in, her eyes narrowing. "You're saying someone's been watching your live feeds?" Darius nodded, his voice tight. "That's exactly what I'm saying." He turned his laptop around so they could see. The logs clearly showed repeated access to video streams, his front door, living room, even his bedroom. Melanie, still standing nearby, looked confused. "Wait, what do you mean watching?" she asked, suddenly unsure of herself. Darius looked directly at her. "I mean, whoever's behind this isn't just stealing Wi-Fi. They've been watching me, and maybe watching other people too." That hit different. For the first time, Melanie didn't have anything to say. She looked like she was trying to figure out how it got this far. Navarro and Carter exchanged a glance. The look in their eyes said it all. This wasn't some random neighbor dispute anymore. This was something serious. Someone had built a system right in this quiet neighborhood to spy on people without them ever knowing. And now the question was, how many homes had been watched, and who was behind it? Darius kept digging. He wasn't a hacker, but he knew enough about networks to trace where the camera data was being sent. He opened a list of IP addresses and followed the traffic. That's when his stomach dropped. The information wasn't being sent to some faraway server or random location. It was staying local, right there in the neighborhood. He looked up at the officers. "It's not going outside the area," he said. "Whoever's doing this, they live close, like really close." Officer Navarro leaned over. "Can you tell how close?" Darius nodded and pulled up the signal strength readings, comparing them with connection times and locations. A few taps later, he found it. One address stood out. It matched perfectly when he read it out loud. Melanie's face changed. She looked like someone had knocked the air out of her. "No," she said, almost whispering. But Darius was already turning to her, eyes cold. "That's your house," he said. Melanie didn't speak. She just stood there, frozen. And then it all started clicking. Her nephew Brandon, the quiet 22-year-old who had moved in a few months ago, always glued to his laptop, barely coming out of his room. The kid she defended without question. Now, she couldn't help but wonder, what if it really was him? What if the person watching them all was inside her own house this whole time? Melanie didn't say much as she led the officers back to her house. Her steps were slow, heavy, like her legs didn't want to move. She kept replaying everything in her head. Brandon staying up late, always on his computer, locking his door when no one was around. At the time, she thought it was just normal stuff. He was a college kid, after all, but now, it all felt different. Her heart pounded as she reached the front door. She opened it quietly and called up the stairs. "Brandon, can you come down?" For a minute, no answer. Officer Navarro looked at Carter, then stepped inside. "We're going up," he said. Melanie didn't argue. She just stood there, arms crossed tightly like she was holding herself together. They walked upstairs and stopped outside Brandon's door. It was closed. No sounds. Navarro knocked hard. "Brandon, this is the police. We need to talk." For a second, nothing. Then they heard movement like a chair scraping the floor. Carter's hand hovered near her holster, just in case. The doorknob turned slowly, and the door creaked open. There he was, Brandon Foster, standing in the doorway, eyes wide, fingers twitching nervously. He looked from the officers to his, and then back again. "What's going on?" he asked, but deep down, he already knew. Officer Navarro didn't waste time. He looked Brandon straight in the eye and said, "We have reason to believe you've been accessing security cameras in this neighborhood. Want to explain that?" Brandon blinked, his face still, but his hands gave him away, fidgeting at his sides, gripping nothing. "What? That's crazy," he said, trying to sound calm. "I don't even know what you're talking about." But Carter wasn't buying it. "Mind if we check your laptop?" she asked. Brandon tensed. "You don't have a warrant." Navarro stepped forward. "We can get one, but right now, we're giving you a chance to tell the truth." For a second, Brandon looked like he might argue, but then his shoulders dropped and he let out a breath. "Look, I wasn't trying to hurt anybody. I was just messing around. At first, I just wanted to see if I could get into someone's Wi-Fi." Melanie stepped forward, her voice shaky. "Brandon, please tell me you didn't do this." He looked at her, and the guilt showed. "I didn't mean for it to go this far," he said. "Once I saw the cameras, I got curious." Carter's voice cut through the room. "Curious or obsessed?" Brandon didn't answer. He couldn't, because deep down, he knew the truth, and so did everyone else. The room was silent for a long second. Brandon stared at the floor, like the words were too heavy to say. Finally, Navarro asked, "How many people have you watched?" Brandon hesitated, then shook his head. "I don't know," he muttered. That was it. That was the moment Melanie's heart broke. She took a step back, like she needed space just to breathe. This was her nephew, the boy she took in, helped through school, gave a home to. And he had been sitting in his room, spying on their neighbors like it was some kind of game. "I swear I wasn't trying to hurt anyone," Brandon added, but his voice was barely above a whisper. No one responded. The damage was already done. Officer Carter moved in, calm but firm, and took out her handcuffs. "Brandon Foster, you're under arrest for illegal access of computer systems and unlawful surveillance." Brandon didn't fight. He just stood there, pale, with his hands behind his back as she cuffed him. Melanie turned away, wiping at her eyes. She couldn't even look at him, and Darius, he watched it all from the sidewalk outside. The same man who got accused of something he never did had ended up being the one who uncovered the truth. The one person no one believed at first turned out to be the only one who saw what was really happening. Brandon didn't say another word as the officers led him down the stairs and out the front door. His head was low, eyes locked on the ground, hands in cuffs. Melanie followed behind slowly, her face pale, like she still couldn't believe what had just happened. Outside, Darius was standing in the same spot where it all started, on the edge of his driveway, phone still in hand, watching quietly as they passed him. Officer Navarro paused. He looked Darius in the eye and said, "You were right. If you hadn't caught this, we might have never known." Darius didn't respond. Right away, he looked at Brandon, then at Melanie, then back at Navarro. After a beat, he said, "You know, what's wild? I was just changing my Wi-Fi password. That's it. And somehow, I was the one who got the cops called on me." Melanie flinched. She opened her mouth, but no words came. Finally, she said softly, "I was wrong. I assumed it was unfair." Darius nodded, almost to himself. "I don't need an apology," he said, already turning back toward his front door. "Just do better." He walked inside without another word, and as the patrol car pulled away, Melanie stood alone in the street, trying to make sense of everything she'd just seen and everything she had missed. Melanie stayed, standing in the middle of the street long after the police car disappeared around the corner. The neighborhood was quiet again, but everything felt different now. She kept thinking about how sure she'd been so quick to assume the worst about someone. Just because he didn't wave or make small talk, she thought she was protecting the neighborhood. In reality, she had almost helped the real problem go unnoticed. The truth had been right there the whole time, just a few doors away. But instead of paying attention to what mattered, she had focused on the person who looked different, acted different, and didn't fit her idea of what was normal. Darius hadn't raised his voice. He hadn't lashed out. He didn't even ask for an apology. He just told her to do better and walked away, and somehow that hurt more than if he'd yelled. It stayed with her, that one moment, and those few simple words felt heavier than anything else. She had judged a man who was only trying to protect his home, while the real danger was sitting under her roof the whole time. That kind of mistake doesn't go away easy. It sticks, and it changes the way you see everything after. Sometimes the biggest problems aren't the ones we expect. People get caught up in how someone looks, where they're standing, or how quiet they are. They jump to conclusions without facts, without questions, just feelings. And those feelings can do real damage. Darius wasn't doing anything wrong. He was protecting his home, minding his business. But one person's fear, one quick call, almost turned him into a suspect. That's how fast it can happen. And while everyone was focused on him, the real issue, someone secretly watching the whole neighborhood, almost stayed hidden. This story isn't just about Wi-Fi or cameras. It's about how easy it is to get things wrong when you judge first and listen later. It's a reminder that not everything is what it seems. And sometimes the person you're suspicious of is actually the one trying to help. So before you make up your mind about someone, pause, watch, listen. The truth might not be what you thought. You might end up learning something that changes everything.